Welcome, fellow Resolute Life traveler. You've just stepped into another chapter of the Resolute Life. And whether it's your first time or your 50th, we're grateful to walk this path with you. For those joining us for the first time, this could be the spark that leads you to a life of fulfillment, achievement, deep connectedness, and unshakable resilience. A life underscored by a different set of values and principles. And to those who've been listening to our podcasts, watching our videos, or following along on our blog and social media, thank you. We hope our words have nourished your soul and sharpened your purpose. If this message touches something true within you, don't keep it to yourself. Share the light, extend the invitation, because the Resolute Life was never meant to be walked alone. Like with all our videos, today's message is built on the foundation of the book, The Daily Life of Resolute Beings Live with Intent, available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and on our website. Your copy could be the start of your transformation. And before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed so that each new video reaches you the moment it's released. Today we are going to talk about the difference between being and doing. The difference between being resolute and merely doing resolute things. Let's start off by acknowledging that there is a peculiar connection between doing and being. A link between activities and any given lifestyle. At first, any random activity, like going for a run, do not represent a specific lifestyle, such as active lifestyle. Perhaps someone is running simply because they are late for an appointment, or lost control of their dog whilst walking in the park. Therefore, just because someone is doing something, in this case running, does not mean that they are living a physically active lifestyle. But repeatedly performing an activity, often in conjunction with other related activities, start forming habits, and habits are the building blocks of any lifestyle. Going for a run 3 to 4 times a week, coupled with healthy eating and good sleeping, leads to a physically healthy lifestyle. Regular reading and research, coupled with regular robust discussions with others, reflect an intellectual lifestyle. This is the fundamental truth that James Clear speaks about in this book, Atomic Habits. Stephen Covey, the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is also a big believer in cultivating habits that lead to a successful life. And it is most definitely true that the daily life of resolute beings is characterized by specific, identifiable habits. And that these habits in turn comprise of specific, identifiable activities. Therefore, activities and habits are fundamental to a resolute life. Just like the Bible says, a tree is known by its fruits, the resolute life can be identified through observing its habits and activities. However, the teachings of the resolute life is grounded on the fact that repeated behavior, in other words habits, are never sustainable if they do not reflect who you are at the core. Yes, as we have seen in a previous video in this series, we can change our core worldview over a long time through the flow of influence, which starts at the behavioral level. Over a long time and with unbreakable discipline, we can become a different person by behaving differently. However, most people simply do not have this level of grit. And then people who are spontaneous and creative will most certainly never keep to the strict routine required for changing their core from the top down. In fact, it is actually unacceptable for us to require spontaneous, creative people to sacrifice their personality for the sake of mind-numbing discipline. Before we go on, just a quick note. One cannot live a life of fulfillment, achievement, connectedness, and resilience without any discipline at all. Sometimes we must simply do things we don't want to, or that do not come naturally to us. This is called growth. Doing the right thing even when we don't want to. Discipline is important, but too much discipline can strangle the life out of most people. Discipline comes much easier to some people, and in fact, some people grow exponentially within environments of strict discipline. But we cannot force this approach upon all people. We are all different, and the level and type of discipline required in our lives are different. But we digress. Going back to the fact that for most people, habits do not lead to a sustainable, fundamental change at our core. For most people, habits must be used as a tool that complement and solidify a change that has already taken place at the core. In other words, if you want to change your life, you must start at the core. You must build a new life from the bottom up. For resolute beings, habits are not the catalyst for change. Habits represent mere learned behavior. Resolute beings are not rats or pigeons in some behavioral psychology experiment, where observed behavior somehow represents the innermost sanctity of our being. The daily life of resolute beings cannot be diluted to activities. It goes much deeper, to the very core of our being. Any set of habits, any type of learned behavior, cannot be sustained over time and under pressure, if they are disconnected from who you are as a person. In the short term, you might be able to act like a resolute being. But if you are not a resolute being at the core, the truth will eventually come out and expose your real substance. If you want to behave like a resolute being, even under the most pressurized environment, you must be a resolute being. Therefore, to effect lasting change in your life, you must start by changing your core. Many of the content that we have released, our blogs, podcasts, and videos, speak directly to this. You must change your core paradigms to become the person you want to be. Change in your core paradigm will lead to a change in your belief system, which will lead to a change in your attitude, which will lead to sustainable change in behavior. Changing your core is hard work, but the cathartic experience coming from breakthroughs at your core releases so much energy that developing the habits needed to solidify these changes becomes much easier. That being said, the best way to change your life in the shortest amount of time is to work from the bottom up by changing your core, and from the top down by changing your habits. Being a certain type person someday starts with being that person today, and therefore discovering, developing, and sustaining a resolute lifestyle starts with practicing the activities connected to its principles. These principled activities will form habits, and the habits will embed and solidify the principles. Before you can experience the fulfillment, happiness, and success that the resolute life brings, you must behave in a way that signifies resoluteness. A fulfilled life, in any way you look at it, comes from having the right habits, repeatedly performing a series of acts that cultivate fulfillment. The life you desire does not come from doing big, out of the ordinary things every once in a while, but from dedicated, everyday living with the right habits. Only with the right habits would you be sufficiently prepared for the extraordinary opportunities that a resolute life brings. However, to labor the point, being resolute goes radically deeper than the behavior represented by habits. There is a change required at the core of your character. It is true that behavior is the only way in which we could objectively determine someone's character, but character is much more than a combination of habits. Therefore, the resolute life disagrees with Stephen Covey when he says, "Our character basically is a composite of our habits." As a resolute being, your character is a composite of your principles, the fundamentals that flow from the very bedrock of your internal reality. Your behavior represents the mosaic of the paradigms you hold. Your habits are the consequences of your principles, not the other way around. The three principles that form the core of the daily life of resolute beings certainly embrace the power and effectiveness of habits, but promote the belief that without having the right principles embedded at your core, the execution of the right habits will not be sustainable. History has taught us that when people try to develop habits that are not supported by principles, one of two things will happen. It either leads to the eventual abandonment of the habits, since the source of energy needed to sustain the habits is absent, or it leads to fundamentalism, where unhealthy enslavement to habits is enforced, at the expense of everything else. People that find themselves in either scenario feel suffocated by unprincipled habits, instead of feeling energized by the incredible power principled habits could have. Habits are meant to support a principled lifestyle and can never stand on their own. The principles espoused in the book, The Daily Life of Resolute Beings, assist you to identify the three most important elements that will drive you to fulfill your deepest needs, accomplish your goals, and form deep connections with others. It groups certain lifestyle traits, habits, or behaviors into three easy-to-remember groups that make it easy to incorporate into your daily living. Although the book itself provides a lot of techniques and guidelines that aim to assist you to discover and cultivate the three principles, it is up to you to decide how you would practice them in your daily life. There is never only one way to be principled. Being a good friend can take on many forms depending on the context. For example, in some contexts, being a true friend means that you remain loyal to your friend, even if they are wrong. Other times, being a true friend requires you to speak the truth to your friend, even if you know they don't want to hear what you are saying. Therefore, once the principles have been established deep in your core, they germinate and grow, and your internal and external behavior start exhibiting the characteristics of a resolute existence. But this behavior is a natural expression of your unique resoluteness, not a blind following of a set of rules or a set of habits. When the focus is on principled being, rule-driven doing becomes irrelevant. When you live in total alignment with the principles, your actions will always be principled and right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember to subscribe and to share this video with others. Check out other content on our website, socials like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, podcasts on Spotify and Apple. We also have a WhatsApp channel that shares daily inspirational quotes. And if you have not done so yet, get your copy of The Daily Life of Resolute Beings live with intent today. Join us next week when we delve deeper into the unique worldview promoted by the Resolute Life. Until next week, live resolutely.